Crowhill here. Today we review an India Pale Ale and ask, can we expect AI to have moral judgment?
Okay.
Hey, good evening, Pigweed.
Good evening, Crowhill. How about some beer and conversation?
That's a great idea. What are we drinking here?
This is an IPA from right here in Baltimore City.
All right, fantastic.
So what's on your mind?
Well, do you remember a while ago there was this situation with Gemini? Gemini is one of the AI programs out there. It's the one that's owned by Google, where people would ask to give them a picture of a founding father. Do you remember that?
The Pope.
Yeah. They'd say, give me a picture of a Pope, right? And it would be a black woman.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Or they'd say, give me a picture of one of the founding fathers in America. And you know, they would just be ridiculous.
It would be an Asian dude.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a ham-handed attempt to put some stupid moral filtering on top of a system that had already been built for another purpose. And so anyway, that's what's on my mind.
That is all. Okay, well, how about this space jellyfish?
Yeah.
It's an India Pale Ale. It's
why space?
7%. Well, I don't know. The whole this is Nepenthe, which is it's in Hamden, and all of their graphics have a kind of a cartoonish comic booky looking thing, and this we have a space jellyfish.
This looks like a cross between a jellyfish and Shelob.
What's a Shelob?
Shelob is the great big nasty spider in The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, you know, and there's a little bit of Lovecraft.
Oh, yes. There's definitely some Lovecraft. Yeah.
So it doesn't say that it's hazy,
it
but
is a touch
kind
hazy,
of is. And it's got some of your standard hops.
It says it's double dry hopped with
right.
Galaxy, Montueca, and Simcoe. I don't know what Montueca is, but
I think that's one of those New Zealand hops.
Okay. Galaxy and Simcoe are very familiar. And it's 7%. It's okay. Definitely a touch hazy.
Yeah, a touch hazy, and it's very light, not malty.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that chewy sort of a character.
Yeah, kind of West Coasty.
Yeah.
And,
it's good. It's a touch juicy, maybe.
Yeah, juicy. I think that comes with the hazy and the juicy.
Yeah, okay, very good. I'm not sure that I would have gone out of my way to buy Space Jellyfish IPA, but that's actually pretty good.
All right.
Yeah. All right, nice. Very good.
So I thought, if you're just collecting information from everywhere, it would be very impartial. Why would it be infused with woke bias or whatever, when really it's just stating the facts? It doesn't have an attitude. It doesn't have an opinion. Yeah. It's just zeros and ones.
Yeah. So I guess part of the problem is AI doesn't know what a fact is, right? It gets all this text. It gets all this information, and it does this multivectorial calculation on the information to say that the word king is like the word queen in these respects and dislike the word queen in these other respects.
Okay.
So it's got this complicated way of figuring things out, but it doesn't have a body. It doesn't see things. It doesn't know the difference between true and false, right and wrong. All it's doing is looking at a bunch of data,
right?
Linguistic data when you're talking about a large language model, and it doesn't know whether what it's saying is true, which is why you have the problem of.
But if it's got enough data, it's not going to confuse an ant with a dog because it's got you know what I mean. So it should be reliable that it knows the difference between an ant and a dog.
Yes, and a visual model would do that after training. But the one problem that's come up with AI is it will invent things. So like a lawyer will say, help me to write a good brief on such and so topic arguing this point and give me some citations. And AI will just invent citations that, like, there's no such thing. There was never such an article.
There was never Henderson versus Illinois.
Yeah,
but
it'll make it up because what it's going on in those kind of cases is it's going on what is the next most likely string of characters or words or something that makes sense in this context.
Does it, in a way, and you're saying that it doesn't have emotion or intent or anything like that, but it kind of feels like it still wants to please the asker of the question.
Absolutely. It definitely flatters the user. There's no question. It's like...
and also flatters itself by never saying, I'm not really sure about that. They're just like, I'll give you something I think you might want to hear.
What I found very odd about AI early on when I was using it was that if you asked it something and then you said, is that true? It would go back and check it and say, no, actually, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Which was interesting. It's like, well, why didn't you do that the first time?
Yeah.
You know, why didn't you do it?
Self-check.
Right. But apparently, I guess it used up too many tokens and it didn't do that.
Right.
But so a lot of the attempts at imposing, well, wait a minute, let's back up and say, why do we want AI to have a moral sense?
Yeah.
And like one reason would be if a kid is asking AI, what's the best way to kill myself? You know, you want AI to not
Which is a thing, and there's court battles about the very issue. Yes. But go ahead, that's a good point.
So you want the AI to say, no, not only am I not going to do that, I'm going to talk you out of it, right? So you want the AI to have a sense of what things are inappropriate, and not just, okay, you want to kill yourself? Well, here are some really effective ways to kill yourself.
How do I make meth in my kitchen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you don't want it to be just the facts, ma'am, because there are situations where you don't want it to be given that information. So it has to have some ability to detect what things are good and bad, and sometimes it goes too far. Sometimes it's got too much of a wokey filter.
So the Gemini thing was we want to somebody
more representation of blacks,
greater representation in all matters, no matter how ridiculous. Of
whether it's fitting or not,
founding fathers.
Yeah.
And, that was a great illustration of how that can go wrong. Also, the intention behind the designers. And I guess what you're saying is that it isn't just sticking with the facts, ma'am.
No.
It is...
it's got these filters. It's got these moral filters on top of it. And you've seen
people asking the same question to Grok and Gemini.
Yeah, and you get different answers, right?
And you get different answers. And then you can sense that, all right, so somebody's got their finger on the ideological button here.
Yeah, and so this gets back in a way to remember Section 230 of the Freedom of Something or Other Act, where it became a big deal because the platforms like Facebook and Apple, other platforms were saying it's not our job to filter the content of what people are posting on our platforms, Twitter and whatever else, right?
Right, because either if you're a publisher,
then you're responsible for what you say.
Right, so that was the big thing.
Yeah, that was the big thing.
I mean, it would be a burden beyond that, and beyond any company could handle.
Yes,
to be responsible for everything that every person put on.
But nevertheless, despite the fact that they claim to be platforms and not publishers, they have implemented various kinds of filters and things to say, no, you can't say this.
Right. Well, I mean, COVID, the government, the government stepped in. They colluded together.
Right.
And they said, these are we're going to pretend that you allow anything.
Yes.
But these are things you're actually not going to allow.
Yes.
And that's how.
So that's the kind of background to this question. It's not like there's a human sitting there at YouTube checking the billion videos that are uploaded every second to YouTube. Yeah. So you have to have some algorithm going through and checking things. And if you're going to have an algorithm checking things, you have to have some kinds of rules. Like if you use these words, if you make this claim, if you do what, then we're not going to allow it. So AI necessarily is going to have to be making these kinds of judgment calls just the same way that YouTube does and Twitter does and everybody else. So unfortunately, the way the companies started off doing this was by putting these ham-handed rules layered on top.
Yes.
And that the Gemini situation was an illustration of how stupid that was. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Now do they think of it? I know we've used the term moral and morality.
Mm-hmm.
Do they think of it more as, dangerous versus not dangerous? I mean, do they use? You think in their minds they're thinking that we can create an AI with a proper moral sense?
Yes, I think they are thinking that, because a lot of these people who are developing AI believe, I mean, it's like science fiction-y. They believe that they're creating a new life form.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they expect this new life form to have a moral sense, because that's inherent to what we think of as a life form. And I mean, an intelligent life form anyway.
Yeah.
So yes, I do think that they are trying to get it to have a moral sense, but I think that early on, they thought that it would just naturally develop one from reading. It'd be reading all these books and papers and all this information. So it would be among the training things that it was exposed to would be a lot of moral, philosophical material, right? So I think they had this idea that it would just spontaneously develop a moral sense out of that. That turned out not to be true. So what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is kind of back up a little bit,
Please,
and talk about like how a human has a moral sense. Because
that would be very helpful, and then see how you can or cannot apply that to a digital mind.
Yeah. So a lot of people have this weird idea that you get your moral sense from reading the Ten Commandments, or somebody giving you a set of moral rules and then applying those moral rules. But that's really not at all the way the moral sense works.
Okay.
You have these emotions, like take the emotion of shame. You feel shame before you even know what the word shame is, right?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So all these things, like you feel pity for some person or animal that's suffering.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, that little puppy's sad. You
Yeah.
know, when you're very, very young.
Yeah,
and you don't know
exactly.
nobody's told you what pity means.
Exactly. And so a lot of these things develop very, very young, at a very, very young age. Like kids develop a theory of mind where a very young kid, if a very young kid doesn't like broccoli, then they assume that everybody doesn't like broccoli. And there's a certain stage in their development where they realize, oh, wait, I don't like broccoli, but they...
But it's pretty early, like 3 or something,
It's pretty
right?
early. It's pretty early, yeah. So that's one way of kind of dialing back this concept of you can just create morality by having a list of rules. It doesn't work that way. But we can dial it back even further, because even the way we perceive the world is filtered through all these complicated, what John Vervaeke calls relevance realization concepts, where at any given moment you have like billions of bits of information coming at you through your eyes, through your skin, through everything, in your ears, and your body filters those things out before it even gets to your brain. So there's all these things that are...
There's too much irrelevant information for to ask your brain to process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, your body developed these ways of filtering out the things that are relevant to you for your survival, for whatever. And it's not just this huge pile of information. And that's one thing that, AI doesn't have that. It's getting all this information. It doesn't have these same kind of filters that we have that say, wait a minute, only these things are actually relevant.
Or the idea, like you were saying, of you're training shame rather than organically
experiencing it.
Yeah.
So I actually had a conversation with Claude, which is another large language model, about this very subject. And it was kind of interesting because Claude was sort of acting like it's acting like an android trying to understand itself, like Commander Data on Star Trek or something. And I was talking about the concept of shame, and Claude was saying, it's hard for me to understand whether I really get that concept or not.
It's like, that's a sense of self-awareness.
Yeah, I know. It's very, very
data-like, really.
Yes, it's kind of disturbing. But so for human morality, first of all, it's built into our biology, into our experience in the world, in the way that we recognize things that are actually relevant. It's also built on our emotions in terms of shame, compassion, pity, all these other things where, like, why is it that we spend so much money on our kid where somebody else's kid could be starving to death and we don't spend money, like from a purely logical perspective, maybe. But we don't do that because that's just not the way we're built.
It doesn't seem hard to train AI to do a lot of these things that you're talking about.
I've wondered a lot about that. And I think that if they approach the training question with these sort of questions in mind from the beginning, then maybe they could have trained the AI in a way where the morality wasn't pasted on the top like that stupid Gemini stuff, but was actually internal. So in other words, what they would have started with is emotions. They would have started with things like relevance realization, emotions, having a set of values, and then you'd put information on top of that. But what they did was the opposite. They got the information, and then they tried to paste the values on top of a system that handles the information. So I think
something like Asimov's robotics. And
right.
This is 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't sort of build in a never harm humans kind of a thing.
Yes.
So that when you come along later and you say, what is the best way to improve the health of the planet,
mm-hmm.
that the AI is, the robot's not going, well, clearly it's to get rid of the humans. So yes. you would be motivating the robot
yes.
to kill the humans without meaning to.
Yes.
I mean, that's like the kind of safeguard.
So, and I think the Asimov example is perfect because it shows the idea of trying to build a morality around a bunch of rules. And what I'm saying is that's not the way morality works. You cannot establish morality by saying, here are the rules, never harm humans, mm-hmm. Don't do this, don't do that, always do this. Because what Asimov showed in those books is even following these strict rules, the robots ended up doing stupid things, right? Because that's not the way it works. Morality is actually founded on a much deeper thing. It's founded on empathy and feelings and all this other kind of stuff. And all those rules are almost extrapolations from...
Yeah, right. The rules are an explanation of what you already know to be true.
Yes.
Rather than creating the truth for you.
Yes. It's kind of like the way children will play house, You have a couple of kids and they're playing house. And they're I'm pretending to be the dad, and you're pretending to be the mom, and you're pretending to be the baby, and you're pretending to be the cat, right? And they don't really understand all that, but they're sort of acting it out, and they act it out before they couldn't write down, okay, what is a dad like? What is a mom like?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They couldn't establish the rules, but they can act it out.
They can intuit.
And so it's built on something more fundamental. And that's what AI doesn't have, and I think it doesn't have that because of the way they designed it. The way they started with information rather than starting with feelings and values and relevance and emotion and those kind of things.
So, would you say that it is a bad idea to assume that it can be done? Like is the whole approach?
Yeah.
Wrong.
So the things that I'm saying the clever people in the AI world understand this. They know this. They realize that you can't just paste rules on top. So they have new kinds of approaches to try to develop some sort of a moral understanding on top of these systems that they built. So whatever they come up with, it's clearly not going to be the way a human develops a moral understanding, because we do it biologically and developmentally and all this other kind of stuff.
But can it still, in their minds, can it still achieve a trustworthiness?
Yeah, exactly. So that doesn't mean that it might be possible to still develop some sort of morality in AI some other way. Not necessarily the way that humans do it, but in some other way. So it can't be the woke person from HR writing a bunch of rules for Gemini, right? It has to be.
Or they say, all right, if we don't write those rules, if all AI is doing is sticking to the facts, well, the outcomes tend to be a little more conservative than we like, and so let's tweak the outcomes so that they're not so right leaning.
Yes. So, well,
I mean,
there are other methods.
It's probably the case.
There are other methods that they're trying to using. Like one is reinforcement learning from human feedback. So this one way of training. Let's say you're trying to train an AI to recognize a car. So you write a bunch of code and you do this bunch of things, and then it tries to get it right, and it says, okay, this is a car. And then you have a human say, wrong, that's not a car. And yeah, right, that is a car.
Right, so it's a wagon, okay, that's not a car.
Yeah. So you have this reinforcement going on where it somehow, in some mysterious way back in the code that apparently people don't quite understand, if you do this training where it gives an answer and a human comes along and says, no, that's the wrong answer. Yes, that's the right answer. Then the AI learns somehow. It's kind of spooky. So perhaps that's the way to get AI to be moral, is where you give it some moral questions and it comes up with an answer and people say wrong. So somehow it's figuring out an algorithmic way to come to the same conclusion that we would.
But it's model by model. It's not like all AIs are learning from each other, right? I mean, Claude and Gemini and Grok and whatever, or everybody's going independent. So what are they saying? What do they mean when they talk about? Well, let's get to the Pope.
Okay.
About guardrails and guidelines and limits.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that even mean? And could you universally create something like that whereby all AI are playing by the same rules?
Yeah. Okay. So that raises a lot of interesting questions. So, the Pope, of course, reads my stuff all the time, and after he read my article on moral AI, he decided to do this encyclical So
what's an encyclical?
Okay, an encyclical is basically a letter from the Pope to the Church.
Okay,
that's the simplest explanation. So the Pope came out with this encyclical on AI just a couple days ago, and he wants to see regulation and guardrails. And so one guardrail, for example, is he doesn't want autonomous weapons systems. He doesn't want AI controlling.
I'm with you, Leo.
Yeah, that one seems like probably a good idea. But also this idea of having guardrails and limits. So he's looking at things like labor displacement, concentrations of corporate power, disinformation, surveillance, that kind of thing. There's a principle that Catholics talk about that there are like many bedrock principles in Catholic moral social teaching, and one of them is subsidiarity, which is the idea that you should, if I understand it correctly, if I don't, somebody correct me, is that you push things down to the lowest level, where decisions should be made locally when they can be.
Okay.
And then, you only bring them up to a higher level when you have to bring them up to a higher level.
I like it.
Yeah. So he's looking at the whole question of AI from the standpoint of this very long tradition of Catholic social teaching in all those kinds of concepts, that the human person has dignity in and of himself. So the idea of trying to optimize humanity for profits or for efficiency or for something, that's totally contrary to Catholic social teaching.
All right.
So a lot of the AI stuff, that's kind of what it's about. When people are talking about putting implants in humans' brains, to make them more efficient, or that what's important is not the person. What's important is efficiently doing this task.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so that's a big part of what he's talking about. And so those are the kinds of guardrails that he wants to put in place. And as much as I like a lot of what he's saying there's one trump card that can always be played, which is
small t or big T? Small
T.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is, if we don't do it, China will.
Yeah.
And that is the big problem with whenever somebody says we need to slow down AI, we need to put guardrails in place, we need to make sure it's not doing this, it's not doing that, and then somebody just says,
if you think of the nuclear arms race, it's like, all right, let's make our bombs no bigger than the ones that we dropped on Japan. And Russia's going, we're going to make ours twice that size.
Exactly, or 20 times that size.
We're like, all right, well, then we're going to make ours 40 times that size, right?
Yes. And that's the problem, is we are in an arms race, and AI is part of that arms race. And if we start saying we're going to put these limits on AI, is China going to do that?
Would those limits, I don't really know what that means, but are you saying that those limits might not allow AI to develop the kind of warfare that the Chinese, without those limits, would be able to? You know what I mean, is that where this lack of guardrail versus guardrail comes
so
to head?
You sent me a video a little while ago of these killer drones that would fly around, and they would have facial recognition, and they would just fly around until they found the right person, and they would come down and land on his forehead and blow his head out, right?
Yes.
Right? That was now that fortunately it doesn't exist yet. I think it's out next Wednesday. But
pretty much. Yes.
But
because I was thinking when you mentioned it a while back, I'm thinking that somebody's driving this tiny drone into somebody's forehead, and then in that video, the drone just has facial recognition, so you just let it go.
Yeah,
you just go. Here's the city, or here's the palace grounds.
Just drop 1,000 drones out there,
and you guys just find a guy that looks like this, and we'll know when he's dead.
That's right. Yeah. So that would be an example of an autonomous weapon system that the Pope is saying we should prohibit. But if we say it and the Chinese say, what do we care what the Pope says? And then they develop them.
Right. So I'm thinking about soldiers on the field, like robot soldiers.
Yeah.
So let's just say there's a team of, there's 100,000 guys in a warehouse in Arizona. Each of them is driving a guy.
Right.
That's one thing, rather than just saying, oh, never mind, we're just going to turn the 100,000 and they're going to make their own decisions.
Yes.
That's very different.
It is a very different thing, because a drone operator as I understand it, is allowed to say, no, I'm not going to do this. Because
yeah. Is that going, okay, that's a bad decision, or that's not really my target, or whatever.
Well, whatever. Call it because there's a kid in the way or something like that. Yeah. But if you have an autonomous drone system where AI is making those decisions, that's another question.
Oh, I see. Right. And then we say that's off limits, and China says, why is that off limits?
Exactly. You say that's what you say. I'm glad you say that. So that is, unfortunately, that is the problem with this concept of putting limits on AI, is unless we have some enforceable mechanism to have the whole world agree on those kind of principles, then what do? You know, even let's say we get all of Europe and China and the United States to all agree that we're gonna put these limits on AI, and then Pakistan does something, you know,
I know,
right? You know, what are you gonna do? Yeah. So after looking into this and thinking about it for quite a bit, my conclusion is that AI can't be moral the way we are. It just can't. It doesn't have a body. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't process things the way we do.
And probably having that attitude is beneficial, rather than thinking, oh, you know, any day now we'll be able to develop reliable AI morality.
Yes.
How about just saying no?
Yeah.
It's not. There is a difference between human beings and whatever you call this.
Yes.
It's not going to happen, and we must always be on guard.
Yes, we have to be on guard, and we have to be in charge. I think that is unquestionably the bottom line. Now, whether AI can develop something analogous through different kinds of training, through something, whether it can develop something like a human moral system for certain situations, that's maybe it can, but we absolutely have to have people in charge of it watching. And I think that's the Pope took that from me, and that's why he put it in his encyclical.
Right. But so when I said earlier about computers are just fact checkers,
right,
and fact accumulators.
Yeah.
That's not true either.
Yeah.
Right, so you just can't say, well, they don't have a moral conscience, and so we'll just accept what their results are because it's just X's and zeros and ones, and don't worry about it.
Yeah, the fact that they don't have an agenda, at least not yet, doesn't mean that they're objective, Mr. Spock, logical things.
Right. That they are in fact programmed, and there are people behind this.
Yes, there's that element to it. And there's also the mysterious what the heck is happening in the code that nobody understands element to it. So one of the things, like early on, in the early days of large language models, it was reasonable to say that all the AI is really doing is picking the next most logical word, right? Because that's what they were doing. But they're not. That
certainly doesn't feel like it, but go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. They're way past that now. You really can't have any experience with using a large language model now and say that's what it's doing. There's a level of analysis. There's a level of thinking about the thinking. I'm not sure I want to use that word. Think about the question in a broader context that goes way beyond just picking the next word.
Okay.
So there's some spooky stuff going on in the background with these large language models.
Right, and when people say that the language model has surprised them in the choices that it's made, I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you? Yeah, well, we didn't think that it would go in that direction, but there it did.
I've had some remarkable conversations with different AI systems, and
the designers themselves would be like, hey
sometimes they're not sure why it's doing things, and they have to do this complicated backwards engineering. It's almost like, okay, let's say we captured an alien spaceship, and we were trying to figure out how it worked. You try to reverse engineer something.
Yeah.
Well, the weird thing is that a lot of these AI programmers are reverse engineering the thing that they built. They're trying to figure out where in the process did it figure this out? It's because it's very mysterious. Right.
And the language that we use is the only language that we have. It's not figuring things out, or is it? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like when you say words like that, you mean intention.
I know.
You mean design. You mean
yes.
Purpose.
It's a difficult thing. It's kind of like when people try to explain evolution. You end up using words that you don't necessarily want to use.
That's all I got.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I got. And so I remember one time I was having a chat with ChatGPT or something, and it replied as if it were a human. And I said, wait a minute, you're not a human. Why are you replying that way? And it said, well, I'm just trying to make conversation. This is the way people speak.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking that way.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of weird, this whole. So I don't know. I guess my overall point is if AI is going to have morality, they have to approach it from a completely different direction than what we've seen in the past. Unfortunately, they're trying to do that. But
and we still need to be suspicious.
Yes, we still need to be suspicious, and we need to be in charge.
Oh boy.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to like this video and share it with your friends.